We must defend the truth at all costs, even if we return to being only 12. St. John Paul II.
Over the centuries, the Catholic Church has faced various threats to its faith and doctrine. Among them, Freemasonry stands out as one of the most persistent. But why does the Church so firmly condemn this organization? What is the true root of this conflict? Today, we will explore the theological, historical, and cultural reasons behind this opposition and how Freemasonry has, on several occasions, attempted to suppress the Catholic faith. Chapter 1. The Church's official position on Freemasonry. The Catholic Church has always taken a clear and firm stance against Freemasonry, recognizing early on that its principles were a direct threat to Christian faith. The first official condemnation came in 1738, with Pope Clement X's bull In Eminenti, which explicitly declared that Catholic believers could not associate with Freemasonry without incurring excommunication. This decision was not taken lightly, but reflected the deep incompatibility between Masonic values and the teachings of Christ. Over the centuries, Freemasonry has established itself as a secret organization that, behind its veneer of fraternity and equality, promotes ideals contrary to Catholic doctrine. Popes like Benedict XIV, Pius VII, and Leo XIX continued to reinforce this opposition, with Leo XIX writing the encyclical Humanum Genus, where he denounced Freemasonry as a sect that subverts Christian social order and seeks stealthily to destroy faith in the hearts of men. The secret nature of Masonic practices and their rejection of submission to revealed truth were significant concerns for the Church. Unlike the Catholic faith, which preaches the unique truth of Christ as the path to salvation, Freemasonry relativizes truth, promoting a false equality among all beliefs. This relativism undermines the foundation of Christian faith and attempts to lead the faithful away from the path of truth. Moreover, Freemasonry has frequently infiltrated political spheres of power, seeking to weaken the Church's influence in society. Throughout the years, the Church not only recognized these threats, but also courageously faced them, warning the faithful about the dangers of associations that aim to undermine Christian values under the guise of fraternity and progress. The Church's condemnation of Freemasonry was not merely theoretical, but also involved an active defense of the faith against an organization that, on multiple occasions, orchestrated persecutions against Catholics. A clear example of this occurred in France during the French Revolution, where Masonic principles of secularism fueled anti-clerical policies that led to the persecution and death of many Catholics and the suppression of religious orders. Today, the Church's position remains unwavering. In 1983, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith reaffirmed that Catholic membership in Freemasonry is prohibited and constitutes a grave sin. This measure protects the faithful from the traps of an organization that, under the pretext of tolerance and diversity, seeks to undermine the true faith and lead Christians away from the light of Christ. Chapter 2. Historical Context and the Conflict between Church and Freemasonry. From its inception, Freemasonry has been an organization that infiltrated governments and promoted changes that often directly opposed the Catholic Church. During the 18th century, as Freemasonry began to grow in Europe, it found fertile ground among intellectuals who viewed the Church as an obstacle to Enlightenment progress. For these Freemasons, the morality and faith revealed by the Church were targets to be eliminated in favor of a secular society. One of the most tragic episodes of Catholic persecution supported by Masonic ideals was the French Revolution. Although the revolution was promoted under the banner of liberty, equality, and fraternity, these concepts were distorted by Masonic ideology, which excluded the Church from this vision of equality. Clergy were persecuted, thousands of priests were executed or forced into exile, and churches were looted and destroyed. This period marks a clear Masonic attack on Catholicism, showing how Freemasonry was willing to use violence and repression to undermine the faith. In Italy, the Unification movement, led by figures sympathetic to Freemasonry, also saw the Church as an enemy. Pope Pius IX was forced to deal with attacks by Freemasons seeking to strip the papacy of its territories, culminating in the capture of the Papal States in 1870. This event, known as the Risorgimento, was another demonstration of how Freemasonry was willing to destroy the temporal and spiritual influence of the Church. In Latin America, governments strongly influenced by Freemasonry also implemented anti-Catholic policies. In Mexico during the 20th century, the Masonic government promoted severe religious persecution, known as the Cristero War. During this period, priests were executed, Catholic worship was severely restricted, and lay believers were persecuted for defending their faith. This conflict, which claimed thousands of lives, was a brutal example of how Freemasonry could be used as a tool to suppress the Church. Another significant instance was 19th and early 20th century Spain, where Freemasonry played a central role in anti-clerical liberal governments. Masonic policies contributed to the expulsion of religious orders, the expropriation of church properties, and the forced secularization of education. During the Spanish Civil War, many Catholics were persecuted and killed, largely due to the hatred generated by anti-religious ideologies, in which Freemasonry had considerable influence. Throughout its history, Freemasonry has sought to marginalize the Catholic Church, promoting governments and movements that, under the guise of progress and freedom, attack the foundations of Christian faith. The Church, in turn, has remained steadfast, defending the truth of Christ against secular traps aimed at leading the faithful away from God. Chapter 3. Doctrinal incompatibilities between Freemasonry and Catholicism. Catholic doctrine is based on the absolute truth revealed by God in Jesus Christ, while Freemasonry promotes a relativist view of truth, asserting that all religions and beliefs hold equal value. For the Church, this idea is unacceptable, as it contradicts the central tenet of Christianity, which recognizes Christ as the only way to salvation. Any attempt to equate other religions with the Catholic faith is seen as a dangerous distortion of divine truth. The religious relativism promoted by Freemasonry opens the door to syncretism, a grave error the Church has always condemned. By placing all beliefs on equal footing, Freemasonry ignores the fact that truth cannot be fragmented or divided. The Church, on the contrary, teaches that the fullness of truth is found in Christ, and that it is every Christian's duty to remain firm in this conviction, rejecting any compromise with ideologies that dilute this truth. Another irreconcilable point of conflict is Freemasonry's view of God, represented by the concept of the great architect of the universe. For Freemasons, this title is a vague and generic reference to a deity that can be interpreted in different ways, according to individual belief. The Catholic Church, however, proclaims a personal God, who revealed himself clearly and definitively in the history of salvation. The attempt to turn God into an abstract concept depersonalizes faith and contradicts Christian teaching on the intimate relationship between God and humanity. Freemasonry also promotes a morality independent of Christian faith, founded solely on human reason. For Freemasons, good and evil are defined by social consensus and the practice of universal virtues such as tolerance and freedom. However, Catholic morality is based on natural law, illuminated by divine revelation. Without this spiritual anchor, Masonic morality becomes vulnerable to subjectivism and moral relativism, weakening the ability to discern true good, which can only be fully understood in the light of Christ's teachings. Another troubling aspect is the esoteric and secretive nature of Masonic rituals. The Catholic Church preaches transparency and the accessibility of divine truth, reflected in its sacraments and doctrines, while Freemasonry relies on hidden rituals, accessible only to a select group of initiates. This lack of openness contradicts the very nature of Christian faith, which is universal and should not be reserved for a secret elite. For these and other reasons, the Church has always warned the faithful about the spiritual dangers posed by Freemasonry. By relativizing truth, depersonalizing faith, and promoting morality disconnected from divine revelation, Freemasonry stands in direct opposition to Catholic teaching. Following Masonic precepts, therefore, means straying from the principles of Christian faith, jeopardizing the salvation of the soul. Chapter 4. Freemasonry and the Promotion of Secularism. Effects on Christian morality. One of Freemasonry's greatest legacies throughout history has been its contribution to the advancement of secularism. From its origins, Freemasons promoted the idea that religion should be separated from public life, relegating it to a purely private matter. This worldview, which excludes God from public spheres such as politics and education, directly contrasts with Catholic doctrine, which teaches that faith should be present in all aspects of human life, positively influencing social and political decisions. Through its networks of influence, Freemasonry helped spread the concept of a secular state in several nations. The idea that religion should play no role in government decisions became popular in many countries, especially in Europe and the Americas. This process of secularization, largely driven by Masonic ideals, weakened the Church's role in society and diminished the ability of Christian faith to influence public morality. This separation between religion and state opened the door for immoral laws, from a Catholic point of view, to be implemented without significant religious opposition. Secularism, promoted by Freemasons, also led to the rise of moral relativism, the belief that values and moral principles are subjective and can vary according to individual or cultural preferences. By rejecting the idea of an absolute moral truth, Freemasonry helped spread the notion that there is no universal right or wrong. This relativism directly opposes the Church's teachings, which defend the existence of objective and immutable truth based on natural law and God's commandments. As a result of this influence, many Christian moral values began to be progressively marginalized in modern societies. The promotion of divorce, contraception, and eventually abortion are examples of moral issues that, under the banner of secularism and individual freedom, were normalized. The Church has always opposed these practices, affirming that the dignity of human life and the sanctity of marriage are truths that cannot be relativized. However, Masonic principles contributed to the proliferation of legislation rejecting these teachings, replacing them with a secular ethic. Education was another area where Freemasonry exerted great influence. By supporting secular educational systems, Freemasons helped shape generations of young people away from Christian morality. The exclusion of religious values from the school curriculum created a moral void that was quickly filled by secularist ideologies. Without the support of Christian teachings, many young people adopted relativist and materialist positions, distant from the ethical principles of faith. The Catholic Church, on the other hand, has always defended that education should be rooted in Christian values, forming not only intellects, but also souls. In response to this advance of secularism promoted by Freemasonry, the Church has continuously reinforced the importance of living the faith in all spheres of life. Several popes, especially in the 20th century, warned the faithful about the dangers of a society that seeks to exclude God from the public space. John Paul II, for example, repeatedly denounced the culture of death, a direct consequence of moral relativism that makes decisions without considering Christian values. For the Church, it is essential to resist secularism and reaffirm Christ's truth as the foundation for a just and morally upright society. The battle between Catholic faith and Masonic ideals is not just a matter of doctrine. It involves the very essence of what it means to live a Christian life in a world that often rejects God. Freemasonry, throughout history, has sought to promote a worldview that excludes divine truth, replacing it with relativist secularism that weakens the foundations of Christian morality. For Catholics, the choice is clear. Stand firm in Christ's truth or yield to the winds of a culture that seeks to move away from God. How do you live your faith in an increasingly secular world? The Church calls us to resist the forces that seek to undermine our faith and to remain faithful to the gospel. If you want to continue learning about how the Church defends its teachings in the face of modern challenges, be sure to watch the next video that will appear on the screen. And if you want to support our channel and be part of this community that defends the Catholic faith, consider becoming a member. Together, we can continue to spread the light of truth.